All right, today we're talking about a completely different way of looking at our industrial world. I want you to forget everything you might know about being less bad, reducing your footprint or trying to minimize harm. We are going to explore a strategy that aims to be 100% good. So let's just dive right in with a question that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's actually happening right now. What if a factory, instead of polluting a river, could actually purify it? What if its roof created a habitat for birds? See, it's not about doing less damage, it's about actively doing good. And this story, well, it starts in a place you'd probably least expect. $2 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering amount of money Ford Motor Company invested to totally reimagine one of its most legendary factories. This wasn't just a facelift, it was a revolution. A massive bet on a whole new kind of industrial future. We're talking about the Ford River Rouge plant in Dearborn, Michigan. Now, for decades, this place was the very symbol of industrial might, right? The heart of the first industrial revolution. But by the end of the 20th century, it had also become a symbol of industrial decay and pollution. So instead of just abandoning it, Ford decided to turn it into an icon for the next industrial revolution. I mean, this contrast really says it all. On one hand, you have the old Rouge. It was a machine for making cars, a masterpiece that took in raw materials and just churned out Model Ts. But it also churned out a ton of pollution. The vision for the new Rouge was totally different. They wanted to transform it into a living ecosystem, a place that integrated industry with nature, not against it. So how on earth did they do it? Well, they looked to nature for the technology. Instead of hauling away truckloads of contaminated soil, they used something called phytoremediation, basically planting specific plants whose roots literally pull heavy metals and toxins right out of the ground. And get this, instead of a conventional stormwater system that would have cost over $48 million, they built porous parking lots and constructed wetlands, all topped by one of the largest living roofs in the world. This whole system doesn't just clean the water, it creates habitats. And here's the real kicker, it saved the company about $35 million. So this wasn't just an environmental win, it was a huge financial one. It proved that this kind of eco-effective design can be incredibly profitable. This quote just perfectly captures the challenge they were up against. This wasn't just an engineering problem, it was a cultural one. An engineer on the project apparently just exploded, saying Ford's way was to pour tar on skylights, not plant grass on roofs. It just goes to show you how radical these ideas were at the time. To get this done, they had to change the very way they thought about design. So what's the philosophy that makes a living, breathing factory even possible? Well, it's a simple but really profound idea that turns our entire concept of waste completely on its head. It's a powerful new model for how we can create, well, everything. The core idea is called eco-effectiveness. For decades, the environmental movement has been focused on eco-efficiency, right? Using less energy, creating less waste, being less bad. But here's the thing, being less bad isn't the same as being good. Eco-effectiveness says, hey, let's design things from the very beginning to be 100% good, creating these regenerative cycles of production where our activities actually nourish the planet. You can really see the two opposing worldviews here. On one side, you've got the old industrial model, cradle to grave. We take, we make, we waste. Everything ends up in a landfill. It's a one-way trip to the dump. But on the other side is the new model, cradle to cradle. And here, everything, literally everything, is designed to be a nutrient for something else. So after you're done with a product, all of its materials can either return safely to the soil as biological nutrients, or they can re-enter the industrial cycle as high-quality technical nutrients. There is no away. There's no such thing as waste. Okay, that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? How does a huge company like Ford, or any company really, start designing products that are 100% good? Well, it turns out there's a clear 5-step framework to get there. Here's the roadmap. It starts pretty simple and then gets progressively more ambitious. You start by just eliminating the worst offenders, then you start making better choices with the knowledge you have. After that, you get really systematic about it, creating lists to sort the good from the bad. And finally, you make the big leap to truly revolutionary design. So let's break these down. Step 1 is the no-brainer. You create what's called an X list of materials that are known to be really bad for us. Carcinogens, mutagens, or just plain toxic stuff. Think PVC, lead, mercury. This is about creating a basic design filter in your head. If something is known to make people sick or damage ecosystems, you just don't use it, period. It's a simple, powerful first cut. Okay, step 2 acknowledges that, hey, we don't always have perfect information. So what do? You start making choices based on informed preferences. You prefer materials that show ecological intelligence, things that were made with respect for the workers and the communities involved, and, this part is really important, things that bring delight and celebration into our lives. Good design should be a joy, not a punishment, right? This is where the whole process gets really systematic. In step 3, you basically perform a technical triage on all your materials. You create 3 lists. First, the X list. We already talked about that. The worst offenders targeted for phase out. Then there's the gray list for things that are problematic but maybe essential for now, like cadmium in some solar panels. And finally, the P list, or the positive list. This contains substances that are defined as safe and healthy. This becomes the palette you want to design with.
So the crucial point in step 4 is a total shift in mindset. You stop tweaking a bad design to try and make it less bad. Instead, you throw out the old recipe and you start from scratch, using only ingredients from your P list, your palette of good materials. This is where you actually begin designing a product from the ground up to be food for both the biological and the technical systems.
And this brings us to the final, and I think the most exciting step: reinvent. Here, you just zoom all the way out. You're not just redesigning a product anymore, you're redesigning the entire system that delivers a service. You stop asking, how do we make a better car? And you start asking, what is the best way to provide mobility? The answers might lead you to a product of service, or to something completely new and unimagined. You know, when you put all of these steps together, you start to see the outline of a radically different future. One that isn't just sustainable, but is actively regenerative. A future where human industry actually becomes a force for good on the planet.
So let's apply that final reinvent step to the automobile. Right now, the pinnacle of green car design is zero emissions. That's a classic eco-efficient, less bad goal. But what if we ask a totally different question?
Exactly. Why aim for zero when you can aim for positive? Imagine a nutrivehicle whose exhaust is actually clean air, whose tires build topsoil as they wear down, and whose passage purifies water. This is the ultimate goal of eco-effectiveness: to create things that don't just reduce harm, but actively replenish and restore the world around them. This quote just captures the vision so perfectly. Imagine a building that acts like a tree. It produces more energy than it consumes, it purifies air and water, and it creates a habitat. Now imagine a city that works like a forest, a rich, diverse ecosystem that supports all forms of life. This is the world that cradle-to-cradle design makes possible. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Look around you right now. Your chair, your phone, the packaging your lunch came in. Which of those things is just waiting for someone to stop trying to make it less bad and instead start reimagining it to be 100% good?